ReefDVMs coming at you with an automatic chicken water. I know you guys might have seen these in our videos in the past where we've made water buckets and automatic waters. But this time I thought I'd shoot it. I've got a 3-foot piece of 1.5 inch PVC, and I've got a valve, got PVC glue, I got 4 nipples, even though I'm only going to use 3. And then I've got a hose end adapter and a couple pieces of fittings just to make it come together. And you can get these at your local hardware store. I happen to have a lot of this stuff laying around, and being that we're all, trying to work on projects on the farm internally, I figured I'd get this one done. So I'm going to prep up the PVC with the primer, and then, put the PVC glue on it and get it all glued together. So I got nice tight seals on each end with my fittings. And as you can see, I am using some threaded fittings to put on the valve and the hose end, and that way I can drain it if I ever need to, or take it apart and wash it. When you build one of these, folks, there's all sorts of different ways to do them. I like to build them just as a tube and pressurize them up. On one end I have basically a square nut so I can take it apart and wash it out. On the other end I have a hose fitting. I have a valve here, and then I have a valve over on the water spigot so I can control the pressure. One thing I've learned is that if you just hook this up to a regular hose line and crank open the valve, it's going to be a lot of pressure on those little nipples, and those little nipples don't always, hold back, and they'll drip a lot more. Now, granted, they do drip somewhat anyways. If you have issue trying to drill a hole and thread the nipples into the PVC, no worries. Just get yourself a really good silicone, and silicone them suckers in. They work great that way too. And the nice thing about silicone versus epoxy or PVC cement is if you do have a wrecked nipple, you can fix it, and that's a good thing. So I'm going to make this one 3 feet long. I'm going to put 3 nipples in it. That'll handle about 12 birds typically. I'm going to hook a regular garden hose up to it, and then take it over to a ground faucet and then hook it to that. At the ground faucet I'll have a valve to control regulation, and here I'll have a valve to control the water regulation. And I'll just set them barely open, each one, so there's not a lot of pressure inside, but there's water, and we'll let the birds peck away at these. As far as the nipples, they're always kind of cheap, so I always got a bunch of these laying around in case I break them. Like I said, in this case, I'm only going to use 3 of them. Kind of figure out where I want to put them here. It looks about right. The one thing I don't like about automatic waters is the birds will sometimes sit on these. Now, meat birds don't. They're so dumb and stupid, especially the white ones. They leave them alone. Occasionally I'll have a red ranger get up on it. That's a meat bird. But layers will definitely get up on these things. So I will take a piece of plywood and make like a tent over it, and I'll show you how I do that. The reason I like doing that is just to keep them off it. I don't like their poop on their water, so it seems to work real well for me on the farm, so that's what I do. A water like this can last a long, long time. But again, the nipples sometimes wear out. I'm going to punch this with a 3/8 inch hole. You might want to use, a little bit bigger if you have the larger bird, more turkey nipple. These are just a small chicken nipple, so they'll fit in here pretty nice and snug. And like I said, if yours leaks too much, unthread them and put some, basic silicone on them, and they'll really tighten in. As far as your quantity, I like to have at least 1 nipple per 3 or 4 birds. So I guess that's just my rule of thumb and from what I've seen, but you're certainly welcome to do less or more. I've got 5-gallon pails that I hang up with these things screwed into the bottom of the 5-gallon pail, and that works too. It's just that you have to fill the pail. Inside the brooding coop here, I don't want to do that. By the way, while I'm doing this and one of my daughters is filming, my other daughter Anna and Julie are over there taking out all the shavings from winter out of the brooding area where we raise our little ones, and they're putting in new shavings. So when we put this together and show you here in a minute, you'll get to see nice clean coop, because they'll have cleaned off the nesting box, and they'll put a new piece of wood on the perch, and they'll wash the door and the window, because that all gets really dirty throughout the winter with dust and stuff. So it'll look real nice here for the video in a few minutes. I just kind of finger tighten these. I am using a wrench just to get on it. But again, just finger tight's all you need. Don't be cranking on your wrench. These things can't hold up to that. There's no nut on the other side, folks. Again, like I said, if they leak, silicone them in. I would say the cost of this, PVC tubes, a couple bucks. Each fitting on the end is a couple bucks. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fittings. And then the valve is about probably 20 bucks. So, you can build an automatic water for under $100 by the time you get done, depending upon what you're purchasing and what your glue expense was and so forth. I am going to crank down this plug on the end. Again, some people just put a cap on the end. You can do that. The only thing I don't like about that is in winter, if I want to shut this off or, I need to move it to a different location, it's hard to get the water out. Versus I can just, because this is only pipe threaded in, I can, use the Mega Lock and a wrench and just pull it apart and put it back together. Notice I'm using Mega Lock. You can use Teflon. I don't care. I think Mega Lock works better than Teflon. It's a Teflon type product, but it's more of a cream. Yes, you get it on your fingers, but I feel that it sticks in the threads better and I get a better seal. And I don't have to worry about, it curling up as I wrap it on or binding when I'm tightening it in like Teflon tape does. And obviously this Mega Lock is made for water lines, so it's safe for being around us, so I figure that's good enough for the chickens too. So again, I'll tighten this fitting on. This plastic fitting is what on one end is a PVC hose fitting and on the other end is a garden hose fitting. So that way I can take this brass garden hose adapter that you see in the upper left there and put it on it, and then I can stick the female end of the hose on it. And that's kind of an important part. If that gets a little confusing, just ask your local hardware store guys. They'll know what you're after there. Basically converting the female end of I'm making the male end of it into a female end so I can hook up a garden hose to it. And it won't be much that I'll open this valve, just a tiny bit so water can just basically trickle in as needed. And again, I'm threading all this. You can certainly slip all these and glue this whole thing together, folks. Just learned over time that sometimes I like to take things apart. And once you PVC glue things together, what a pain in the butt that is. So I do like threading on these kind of parts. It costs a little more to get threaded, but I think it's worth it. I'd say a project like this, I probably could get this thing up and running in about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. All said and done by the time you collect all the parts, get everything together, and get it put together. Just going to have them hold this here if they can hold the end of this. I can get this tight. You want to make sure things are snug. You don't want leaks. Anywhere it leaks is going to collect dust, it's going to get wet, and going to get sticky, and of course the birds will find it and peck at it. Alright, now that we got that on, I'm going to put the adapter on. So that's a plastic hose end with a copper adapter, basically female on each end of that copper adapter. Or excuse me, it's brass. What am I saying? A brass adapter, and then my hose will hook right into that. And there's the water. So now I'm going to mount it to a 4x4. And because I'm in kind of a dirty, wet environment, I'd recommend you either use an AC2, some type of green treated, or use cedar. And this is going to be cedar for us. I like cedar in the coop. Puts out a good smell. It's pretty moisture resistant. These coops have a ton of moisture in them in the winter, even with my ventilation systems. So screw this bad boy down, and then I'll actually technically unscrew it and then screw it to the wall here. Everybody's got a different height preference. I'm not trying to pick on anybody for what height they use. I really do kind of like my nipples sitting about the 12-inch mark. The bigger birds can duck underneath it, and the little birds can still reach it. And I actually have a lot of big birds in here. The layers that are in here are probably only about 2 months away from moving into the coop. So they're about ready to start laying soon. So 60 days, they'll be popping out eggs for us. And, we'll butcher out a bunch of stew birds in the coop, and then, move these guys in. We're on a rotation, folks, on our farm, and we don't waste the birds. The birds that will the old layers, they'll all become stew meat. If not, they become obviously animal meat feed. But the rotation we're on is about an every 2-year rotation. So once a bird gets over the age of 2, we find their layering capacity really diminishes for us. A good, ISA or sex link will probably lay about, 275 to 300 eggs that first year. Maybe the next year, probably about 200. A good barred rock for us will lay about 250 both of those years. And then after that, they really start slowing down. Unfortunately, folks, with the way feed costs and stuff, I can't feed birds that are going to pop out, 1 or 2 eggs a week. That's just not going to work. At that point, make great soup, great stew, make good gumbo, whatever the wife can do with it that cooks it down. Obviously, they're not the greatest for grilling and, eating out on the grill or having whole bird, but it's definitely where we get a lot of our cut up chicken meat from. Makes great chicken salad, stuff like that. So as far as putting this up here now, I'm just going to kind of snap it in with these 1/2-inch holders. Just bought 2 of these at the hardware store in the PVC section to, attach a PVC pipe to a wall. You can attach this directly to the wall, but as you can see, my wall is plywood. As these things drip, they make kind of a mess. And I want them out a little bit so the birds can reach them. You don't have to put these automatic waters straight down either. You can put them at a little bit of an angle so you can actually rotate this thing and turn it so those little waters are sitting out at an angle a little bit too. Sometimes find that the birds like that. We'll see here once we get it on. So basically right now it's on the wall. I just need to hook up the hose and set the valves and start getting water in this. So you can see the little nipples there just kind of hang down. Just make sure they're all nice and snug. And it's time to hook up the hose. I'm going to shut the valve here. I'm barely going to open that when I do it. That valve is hardly going to be open. And then, like I said, I'll also regulate the water on the hose spigot side on the other side over there too. So we're just going to run a hose over here. I got a 5-foot piece of hose that I bought. Kind of like this green stuff. What do they call this stuff? Zilla. Just a pretty decent hose. It's got a little bit of memory to it, but not bad. So I'm going to get this attached to this end so I get the twists out of it and stuff. And then I'm going to pressurize this thing and get this thing up and running. As far as how often do we clean these things, I got to tell you, folks, probably should clean them more often, but I literally clean them about once a year. That's about it. As you can see, my foot here is on black cattle mats. That is the flooring that's on top of about 12 inches of sand inside this raising coop, or what we call our brooding coop. I have sawdust typically on the floor in here, shavings. The reason you don't see them is because I said my kids cleaned it all out for the video, but when I finish up here and I let the birds back in, we'll have the shavings back in. So it might look like it's off the ground quite a ways, but once I put the 2-3 inches of shavings back in, it'll be better. All right, I've almost got the hose hooked up here, so now I can start setting the valve and opening it just a very, 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 very tiny amount. And over here I've got my water. Just going to zip tie this up because birds tend to move things. And then I've got a wall here that's got to be put back in. There's a little like dog cage wall that I've got here, and I'll have that back in a minute. And then we'll be ready to bring the birds in. And like I said, once I have this attached, I just so ever slightly, open this thing up. I'm just playing with it here to see how much I need to open it up to get the water in. Just barely, folks. I mean, it's just a crack. If you open this thing up and pressurize it to your full water pressure, they'll just drip. I'm just checking for leaks, making sure everything's good. And we're going to let the birds in here. You can see now I've got the gate wall back in. My kids have the shavings back down. The only thing left is to put the little guard up here. Otherwise, again, layers will sit on top of this and poop and everything else. So just take a piece of plywood, tip it up at an angle, and screw it to the wall. Works really good. These are the Nipplers. If you need to see them, I thought maybe I'd show more of a close-up. They got a little washer on them, and they're just screwed in. But as I said, if you need to, silicone them. I'm going to grab me a piece of plywood here, and we're just going to kind of screw it to the top. This is the rest of this area, if you're wondering. The nesting box has been cleaned out. New piece of wood there for the roost. Our chicken blocks back in here, which you can see is kind of worn off a little, but they're starting to work on it. And there's the piece of plywood. I just put it up with 2 screws, kind of leave it at an angle. Just keeps the birds off it. Simple as that. We'll let these birds in. These are young birds. These birds are born about 15th or so of January. There's a nice big black ISA coming in to take some water off it. You see, they just duck right underneath it and do it. Again, if I put it up much higher, folks, they just can't get underneath to get it when they're young. So I leave it at this height, and then these birds, which are going to get a little bit bigger before they leave, they just got to duck down to get it. They do a great job. These birds are very curious. These are all hens in here right now because, again, these are all going into the laying coop. To get done with hens, we bring in the meat birds. Thank you for watching, folks. Hope you appreciated and liked our automatic water. Again, this thing's hooked up right to a ground faucet. You can see it's barely open, and it works great for giving 24/7 water to our chickens. Have a great day, folks.